Hi, I'm Joshua Matthias, and I am discussing certifying psychic abilities. So, what I'm referring to is certifying psychics with witnesses. In other words, whether they're able to do what they claim to do. And you might ask, why am I doing this? Who else has done this? How am I doing this? And what is next in future research? So, I'm going to start with the why. Though very briefly to move on to the other ones. Uh, so primarily, the hope here is to change the world. So this may address the lack of independent verification of abilities, which may motivate future research, and uh, belief plays a major role in transpersonal social engagement, or in other words, in changing uh, how people interact with each other across society and encouraging peace and collaboration and things like that. Uh, there is a lot of evidence that spiritual beliefs can play a major role in that, and psychic abilities can be tied to spiritual beliefs. And this can lead to positive publicity. And a couple years back, I started a nonprofit called Spiritual Data, which is technically the name brand behind this effort to certify psychics. And it can lead to claiming awards for proving the paranormal, which I'll speak to later. Now, an important second reason is for psychic ability students to know who to learn from for a particular psychic ability. In other words, kind of who to trust, actually knows what they're talking about, or just in terms of like whether they've actually done what they say that they do. And also define motivation by knowing that other people have been able to do this. And third, this is a resource for researchers to know, what qualitative data to include about psychic abilities based on knowing who has evidence that they've actually done it and who to contact. And fourth, there are many individuals who use psychics, such as mediums, for life decisions. And so this is a sort of accreditation process in terms of verifying whether a psychic can do what they claim to do. Now, in terms of previous scientific demonstrations of psychic phenomena, a well-known case is Daniel Douglas Holmes, who was a witness moving tables and levitating by many people, and a physicist, Crookes, considered a scientist, did verify his abilities. Although, as noted here by Beloff, he may not be considered impartial, and this was in the 1800s, so many people don't take this account seriously. Second is Nina from Russia, who was witnessed doing telekinesis many times and recorded on video. And I would actually say that Nina is a case example of what I'm proposing doing. They have a recorded video. It's not very recent, so what I'm doing is more recent, but they basically had many witnesses there showing that she could do telekinesis. And third, William James, as many may know, observed seances by mediums, and he took detailed notes and did some investigations. And he was able to note that some people were frauds and some people were less likely frauds. So that is an example of this type of verification. Although I think he wasn't particularly focused on having like a statistically sound methodology for doing such verification. And four, most parapsychology experiments, from what I can see, are focused on demonstrating statistical significance across many participants. For example, the Feeling the Future study. And they have been able to have some success with using particular methods to make it more likely for sight to happen. However, doing statistical significance across many participants is a very different process than having statistical significance for an individual. Now, I'm also going to discuss a bit the research on ontological existence of phenomena. And this is particularly relevant in the case of the out-of-body experience, where we need to define what that means if we're going to verify that someone can have out-of-body experiences at will, also known as astral projection. And there's a useful paper from Nikawa who proposes combining phenomenological methods with experiments, and that is essentially what I'm proposing to do with out-of-body experiences. And as I note at point 2, there's been some research with inducing out-of-body experiences with hypnosis and then recording that using a phenomenological method called PCI, and then also with a brain imaging method called EEG. And I cite my own paper here where I did a review of that research, and what I found is that more research is needed to clearly define OBs. But from a pragmatic sense, we can at least attempt to define, what an OB, whether a person had an OB subjectively, and then, in addition to that, verify that they're able to learn information in the out-of-body state. Now, third, there are methods to define phenomena that has not yet been scientifically defined, and we may come across situations where someone claims to do something that is psychic that we haven't defined yet, and so we can kind of analyze the data around that and what they're able to demonstrate and come up with a definition. And Alvesen proposes doing this partly because current scientific research is biased by current constructs, and as we go about validating psychic phenomena, we might find that we need to come up with new scientific constructs and definitions. And I also think it's important to review here the research on scientific witnesses and how that relates to science. And McKisson-Surratt here found experimental evidence that qualitative testimony affected participants' judgments of a murder case more than the quantitative evidence. And it's just one example of why it's important to have this sort of qualitative validation. For example, you may have many studies showing that the average person could affect a random number generator statistically, but it may be more meaningful for someone to know that their friends that they trust saw that someone could move an object visibly, and there wasn't really any reason to think that it wasn't telekinesis. So there's this qualitative aspect that may be more significant than quantitative. And also, we're focusing on a particular case. Like legal cases and legal witnesses, we're focusing on particular cases with a particular procedure, and having a sense of finality of, they're able to do it or they're not. So there's some arbitrary decisions to be made as part of that, but we just try to do it in a pragmatic way. And similarly, William James argues for being pragmatic in terms of taking into account the subjective truth and how that operates for individuals. Now, what's missing in previous scientific work is having more recent demonstrations and more demonstrations to be more persuasive, and also very clear confirmation by independent witnesses that we can review, and having a video that persuasively eliminates alternative explanations, and you may have controls as part of that. For example, like seeing what happens if you try to use air to move an object, and then see if that's the same. And then experimental evidence for the individual case as opposed to across participants. Now, in regards to the awards for psychic demonstrations, a list of organizations that offer such awards is found in Wikipedia. And you can also find a discussion on Science Encyclopedia on the $1 million challenge, which is often referred to by skeptics as an excuse to not take the paranormal seriously, which, as the Science Encyclopedia mentions, is a logical fallacy, but nonetheless, people think that way, and it affects people's opinions about whether to consider these sorts of phenomena. So my action plan is to certify psychics via demonstrations with witnesses, and to sponsor taking reliable psychics who pass the demonstration to apply for the award, and ideally to split the money between the nonprofit and the individual, basically making up for the sponsorship and also providing motivation for the individual to do this in the first place. I have a diagram here showing this process, and this is partly to make it clear why this hasn't happened before and why we have to be pragmatic in this. It's both a scientific endeavor and it's project management. So here in the red, we need to identify and contact psychics, and then in the yellow is the process by my nonprofit to determine the necessary testing parameters for each individual, and which is a collaborative process. And and the award organizations may not really be that interested in spending a lot of time with each individual, clarifying what they can do. And then we do preliminary testing, and then certification with in-person witnesses after that preliminary testing. And at that point, if they pass the certification, then they go in a database, and they can be considered, a certified psychic. However, then at that point, we basically take that certification process and video and take that to the award organization for those psychics that are reliable and interested in doing this, and we persuade them that it's worth their effort to do their own test. So down in the green, that's where the award organization is going to be in control of the process and carrying out the award and deciding whether to give the award. So basically, I'm serving as the middleman in this process to actually reach out to the psychics, not just expect them to come, and to give them a more reasonable chance of being successful. Not in that it's not scientifically valid, but being a little more open-minded, you could say, and really wanting them to succeed, but still having independent witnesses that make sure that I'm not just doing fraud here. Now, I'm also going to explain a bit the classifications that I have for this certification. Demonstrably psychic is this preliminary verification via live video, and there may be many people who get past this stage and don't make it past the next stage, but it's still interesting to note, as probably most people wouldn't be able to demonstrate in a live video in a way that's persuasive. And then certified psychic is the case where we have 3+ witnesses in person, although in person could either be at the tester's location or at the psychic's location, depending on the ability, and having the statistical significance, and which I will talk to a little bit more later. And then reliably psychic is what I defined here arbitrarily as 80% effectiveness of the ability. In other words, you can, to that degree, trust that when they do a psychic prediction or demonstration that they're going to be successful most of the time. And then super psychic is basically relatively rare cases where someone may be effective at levitating an object or oneself and have extremely high accuracy, 95% or above. And the super psychics and reliably psychics are particularly useful for scientific investigation. For example, where scientists want to understand what affects the accuracy of psi, or what affects whether someone is able to do PK effectively or not. So if you have someone who's very good at that, then it's easier to test those sorts of influences. Now, I also have here in text what this process looks like. The psychic fills out a form which includes that screenshot I showed earlier. And there's this preliminary verification via Zoom call, then demonstration with witnesses where they sign a document and also articulate what they witness in a qualitative way. And in most cases, the video and details of the trial is going to be made publicly available, and this is particularly important for professional psychics. However, psychics may request anonymity, and the public will be able to search in a database of certified psychics, at least where they're not anonymous, and be able to determine for themselves what to think of this validation. Now, I'm going to clarify a bit more what this testing process looks like. So for telekinesis, moving an object visibly within a controlled setting is one type of telekinesis, where the object is at the location of the witnesses. So that may be remote telekinesis, which I'm working with a couple of people now to do that. But for some people, it may need to be in person. So we can go there in person with witnesses. And levitation is a case where we definitely have to be with the person at their location, and they have to sustain themselves, not just jumping and staying a second and then going back down. It should be, maybe 10 seconds or something that's, very obviously sustaining in the air. And then telepathy in ESP is basically doing multiple trials and achieving statistical significance with being able to know information. And similarly with remote viewing and mediumship and astral projection, they'll have to confirm some information that they learned through that ability. And in that way, they can also achieve statistical significance in terms of the number of options available, and ideally being able to run multiple trials. And statistical significance requires a 1 in 1 quadrillion chance, just for the skeptics, in a sense, to still be valid if the around 117 billion people who ever lived took the test multiple times. So it would still be statistically significant in that case. Finally, what's next is collaborating with more scientists and researchers to refine these methods. There's definitely a lot to still figure out in this process. And there may be researchers who can be witnesses, which would be perhaps a bit better than average neighbors, but random people that we don't know are also useful for being independent. And also we need to get the word out and do marketing and receive applicants. And after this process, we can do research on those who are certified, if they're willing. If you are interested in this research, anyone watching this, I'm happy to collaborate. And these are my references. And that is all. So thanks for watching.